The small town of Pine Creek had never seen such a gathering since the big flood of '98. The town square, usually quiet except for the occasional farmer's market, was filled with people dressed in their Sunday best. Some wore military uniforms with rows of colorful ribbons, while others came in simple dark clothes, clutching small American flags. They had all come to remember Captain Alexis Reyes, 15 years to the day since she was declared killed in action. Robert and Elaine Reyes sat in the front row, their hands intertwined. At 73 and 71, time had not been kind to them after losing their only daughter. Robert's once strong shoulders now curved inward, and Elaine's eyes, though dry today, had carved permanent tracks down her cheeks from years of tears. 3 rows behind them sat Thomas Cooper, a man whose life had stopped the day the military officers brought the news about Alexis. He had been 26 then, with a ring hidden in his sock drawer and plans for a future. Now at 41, his dark hair showed touches of gray, and the small jewelry box remained unopened in his bedside table. He had tried dating a few times over the years, but no relationship ever made it past the 3rd month. His friends had stopped trying to set him up 5 years ago. She would have been 40 today, whispered an older woman to her husband as they took their seats. Can you imagine? Our girl would have been 40. The town had come out in force for this anniversary. Pine Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and they had collectively adopted the Reyes family's grief as their own. Local shops closed for the morning, and the high school band, where Alexis had once played trumpet, performed a somber rendition of Amazing Grace. Mayor Griffith stepped up to the podium, adjusting his tie nervously. This was his first time speaking at Alexis's memorial, having only been elected last year. 15 years ago, he began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Our community lost one of its brightest stars. Captain Alexis Reyes gave her life serving our country in Afghanistan. While the details of her final mission remain classified, the impact of her sacrifice is felt by all of us here today. In the back row, a man in a crisp military uniform shifted uncomfortably. Colonel Peter Walsh had been Alexis's commanding officer and childhood friend. He had made the trip from Washington especially for this day, though each year it got harder to face the Reyes family. He checked his phone quickly, a habit born from years of crisis management, and frowned at a message from his aide. Urgent, call HQ immediately. Peter tucked the phone away. Whatever it was could wait an hour. Today was for Alexis. The mayor continued with practiced phrases about heroism and sacrifice before introducing Elaine Reyes. The crowd grew even quieter as the elderly woman made her way to the podium, supported by her husband. My daughter loved this town, Elaine said, her voice surprisingly strong. When she was deployed, she wrote to me about missing the smell of pine trees after rain and Mrs. Wilson's apple pies at the diner. She paused, touching a simple gold necklace at her throat, Alexis's, recovered from her personal effects. 15 years feels like forever and also like yesterday. I still expect her to walk through our front door laughing about some adventure. In the middle rows, Alexis's high school friends dabbed at their eyes. Many had children of their own now, some almost the age Alexis had been when she joined the army. Thomas stared at his hands, not trusting himself to look up. He had written and rewritten his speech dozens of times in the past week, but now the folded paper in his pocket seemed inadequate. How could words capture what it felt like to lose your future in a single moment? When it was his turn to speak, Thomas walked slowly to the podium. The paper remained in his pocket. Alexis and I met in 10th grade chemistry, he began, his voice rough. She blew up our experiment because she was convinced she had a better formula than the textbook. A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the crowd. That was Lex, always sure she knew a better way. He paused, looking up at the blue sky. She wasn't just brave in combat. She was brave in everyday life. When my mom got sick senior year, Alexis organized a fundraiser that paid for all the medical bills. When our friend Jack couldn't afford college, she badgered the local scholarship committee until they found extra money. Thomas took a deep breath. The hardest part isn't just that she's gone. It's that the world has missed out on 15 years of what she would have done. The people she would have helped. The changes she would have made. His voice cracked. She was the best person I've ever known. As Thomas returned to his seat, Colonel Walsh was called to the podium. Tall and imposing in his dress uniform, Peter commanded attention as he spoke about Alexis's military career. Captain Reyes was exceptional from her first day of basic training, he said. She graduated top of her class at West Point and volunteered for every difficult assignment. Her last mission was critical to national security, and while I can't share the details, I can tell you that her actions saved countless lives. What Peter couldn't say was how he'd argued against that mission, how he'd told his superiors it was too risky with too little support. He couldn't mention that he'd requested to lead the extraction team himself when things went wrong, or how he'd spent years afterward reviewing the operation, looking for what they could have done differently. As the ceremony continued, across the country in a secure facility outside Washington, D.C., Lieutenant General Harris stared at a surveillance photo on his desk. The image was grainy but unmistakable. A woman at a market in Turkmenistan, her face half turned away from the camera but still recognizable to those who knew her well. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 days ago. Confirmation? He asked the intelligence officer standing before him. Facial recognition is 89% positive, sir. And there's this. The officer slid another photo across the desk. A close-up of the woman's wrist showing a small, distinctive scar in the shape of an X. Captain Reyes got that scar during survival training. It's in her medical records. General Harris reached for his secure phone. Get me Colonel Walsh now. Back in Pine Creek, the memorial service was drawing to a close. A local trumpet player performed a haunting rendition of taps while Robert and Elaine Reyes placed a wreath of white roses at the base of the memorial stone bearing their daughter's name. Peter felt his phone vibrate again but ignored it. The ceremony deserved his full attention. Besides, in 15 years, the military had never found anything new about Alexis's case. Whatever urgent message waited, it could hardly change the past. As the crowd began to disperse, Peter approached the Reyes family. This was always the hardest part, facing Alexis's parents with the knowledge that he had sent their daughter on the mission that took her life. Robert, Elaine, he said, embracing them both. The service was beautiful. Thank you for coming, Peter, Robert said, clasping his hand. It means a lot to have Alexis's friends here. Peter nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I wouldn't miss it. Alexis was... He trailed off as his phone began vibrating continuously. You should get that, Elaine said gently. It seems important. Excusing himself, Peter walked to a quiet corner of the square and answered the call. Walsh here. Colonel, this is General Harris. You need to return to Washington immediately. Peter frowned. Sir, I'm at a memorial service. I can be back by tonight. This concerns Captain Reyes, the general interrupted. We have a situation. Peter's heart seemed to stop. What kind of situation could possibly involve Alexis after 15 years? There was a pause on the line. We have reason to believe Captain Alexis Reyes may still be alive. Peter looked back at the memorial stone, at the grieving parents, at Thomas who stood alone staring at nothing. That's not possible, he whispered. We recovered partial remains. Tanae confirmed. I know what we thought, the general cut in, but we've received 3 separate intelligence reports in the past week. And an hour ago we intercepted a message that appears to be in a code only Reyes would know. Peter felt the ground tilt beneath him. What did it say? It said a mockingbird is coming home. Prepare the nest. That was her call sign, Colonel. Mockingbird. As Peter tried to process this information, a military aide approached him, looking anxious. Sir, we just received word. An unmarked helicopter is requesting emergency landing clearance at the county airfield. The pilot claims to be transporting a high-value asset and is using Captain Reyes's authentication codes. Looked across the town square at the people who had spent 15 years mourning, a woman who might somehow impossibly be alive. In his 25 years of military service, he had never faced a moment like this one. How long until they land? He asked, his mind racing. 20 minutes, sir. 20 minutes until a ghost returned from the dead. 20 minutes until 15 years of grief either ended or took on a new, unimaginable form. Tell no one, Peter ordered. I'll handle this personally. Colonel Peter Walsh broke every speed limit between the town square and the county airfield. His mind raced faster than his government-issued SUV as he gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. 15 years of certainty were unraveling with each passing minute. The county airfield was little more than a strip of asphalt, with a small control tower and a couple of hangars used mostly by crop dusters and weekend pilots. Today it was surrounded by military police who had arrived mysteriously just minutes before Peter. Situation report, Peter barked at a young lieutenant as he stepped out of his vehicle. Sir, the helicopter is 5 minutes out. We've established a secure perimeter and cleared all civilian personnel from the area. Medical team is standing by as requested. Peter nodded, scanning the sky.
Any communication from the pilot since the initial contact?
Just one message, sir. Tell Colonel Walsh that Mockingbird kept her promise. Peter's breath caught. It was something Alexis had said to him before that final mission. I promise I'll come back. Mockingbirds always find their way home. He had carried those words like stones in his pocket for 15 years, heavy with the weight of a promise unfulfilled. The distant thump of helicopter blades cut through the air, growing louder by the second. Peter stood rooted to the spot as a Black Hawk helicopter appeared on the horizon, its silhouette stark against the blue sky. It was unmarked, no military designations, no identifying features. All units hold position, Peter ordered into his radio. No one approaches until I give the all clear. The helicopter circled once before descending slowly onto the tarmac. As the blades slowed, Peter approached alone, hand resting on his sidearm. The side door of the helicopter slid open, and a figure appeared in the doorway. Time seemed to stop. A woman stepped down onto the tarmac. She was tall and lean with short copper hair that caught the sunlight. Her face was weathered with a thin scar running from her left eyebrow to her cheekbone. She wore civilian clothes, cargo pants and a simple black t-shirt, but stood with undeniable military bearing. Peter took one step forward, then another, unable to believe what he was seeing. Hello? Pete, she said, her voice exactly as he remembered it, perhaps a touch deeper. Sorry I'm late. Alexis? He whispered. She smiled then, a smile he had seen in his dreams for 15 years. In the flesh, mostly. Peter closed the distance between them, reaching out hesitantly to touch her shoulder, as if expecting his hand to pass right through her. You're real, he said, his voice breaking. How? We found remains. DNA matched. It's complicated, Alexis replied, her smile fading, and not safe to discuss here. She glanced over her shoulder at the helicopter pilot who remained inside. I need secure transport to Washington. Just you and me. No comms, no reports, nothing on paper until we get there. Peter stared at her, taking in the changes 15 years had wrought. She was thinner, harder somehow, with eyes that had seen things no one should see, but unmistakably Alexis. Your parents are here, he said, in town, for your memorial. Something flashed across her face. Pain, longing, fear, before her expression hardened again. They can't know yet. No one can, not until I've been debriefed at the highest level. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. People will die if we don't do this right, Pete, including them. 20 minutes later, they were in a secure vehicle heading for the nearest military airbase. The helicopter had departed as mysteriously as it had arrived, and the military police had been ordered to secure the area and speak to no one about what they had witnessed. I don't even know where to begin, Peter said as they drove. We mourned you. We buried what we thought were your remains. Your parents never recovered. Alexis stared out the window, watching the familiar landscape of her hometown slip past. I know, and I'm sorry for that. More than you can imagine. She turned to look at him. But I didn't have a choice. Were you captured? Held prisoner? For a while, she admitted. The first 2 years. After that, it got more complicated. Peter gripped the steering wheel tighter. 15 years, Lex. 15 years of letting everyone who loved you think you were dead. There's no mission important enough to justify that. This one was. Her voice was quiet but firm. When we get to Washington, when you hear the full briefing, you'll understand. Or at least I hope you will. They drove in silence for several miles before Alexis spoke again. How's Thomas? Peter glanced at her. He never moved on. Not really. Threw himself into his work. Started a nonprofit in your name that helps veterans. Dates occasionally, but nothing sticks. Alexis closed her eyes briefly. And my parents. Your dad had a heart attack about 5 years after you. After we thought you died. Recovered, but it aged him. Your mom holds it together for him, I think. They turned your room into a kind of shrine. God, Alexis whispered. I knew it would be hard, but hearing it... She shook her head. I thought about them every day. Imagined them moving on, finding some peace. There's no peace in that kind of loss, Peter said. You know that. At the airbase, a small jet was waiting for them. No questions were asked as Peter and Alexis boarded, the crew having been given orders from the highest levels to transport them directly to Andrews Air Force Base outside Washington. Once they were airborne and alone in the cabin, Alexis finally began to talk. "The mission went wrong from the start," she said, her voice flat. "We were set up. Someone fed the enemy our exact approach, our numbers, our weapons. They were waiting for us," Peter nodded. "The investigation concluded there had been a security breach, but we never identified the source." "Because the investigation was directed by the source," Alexis said. "My team was killed in the initial ambush. All except me. I was wounded, captured. They wanted information." Peter didn't ask what they had done to her. The scar on her face was likely just one of many. "After 2 years, I managed to escape," she continued. "Made contact with a deep-cover CIA operative. That's when I learned the truth about why we were sent there in the first place." She leaned forward, her voice dropping even though they were alone. "Our mission wasn't to disrupt a weapons deal. It was to eliminate witnesses to one. American-made weapons being sold to terrorist groups by someone within our own government." Peter felt a chill run down his spine. "That's a serious accusation. It's worse than that. The weapons included experimental bioweapons, stuff that makes sarin look like tear gas." Alexis ran a hand through her short hair. "The CIA operative helped me fake my death again and establish a new identity. For the past 13 years, I've been working deep cover, tracking the supply chain, identifying everyone involved. Alone? Without official support? The circle of people I could trust was very small. Had to be." She met his eyes. "You were on the list, but they convinced me it was safer for everyone if no one knew I was alive. Even you." The jet hit turbulence, bouncing slightly. "Neither of them noticed, so why come back now? Why break cover?" Alexis reached into her pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. "Because I finally have everything we need. Names, dates, bank accounts, videos of meetings. The entire network, from the soldiers who carry out the exchanges to the generals who give the orders." "Generals?" Peter's mouth went dry and higher. Alexis tucked the drive away. "I'm coming in now because there's going to be another sale. The biggest yet. And this time the buyers aren't just terrorist groups. They're nations. If this deal goes through, we're looking at the potential for global conflict, Pete. Millions of lives at stake." Peter sat back, trying to process everything. "Why not just send the evidence? Why risk coming in person?" "Because I tried that twice. Both couriers were killed before they could deliver the information." She held his gaze. "And because after 15 years I wanted to come home. Even if it's just to say goodbye properly this time." "What does that mean?" Before she could answer, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Colonel Walsh, we have an urgent message from Andrews. They're reporting unusual activity at the base. Possible security breach. They're diverting us to a secondary location." Peter and Alexis exchanged looks. "It's starting already," she said quietly. "They know I'm back." As the plane changed course, Peter moved to sit beside her, lowering his voice. "Who exactly are we dealing with, Lex?" "People with enough power to shoot down this plane and call it an accident," she replied. "When we land, trust no one except General Harris. He's been my only contact at the Pentagon for the past 5 years." Peter felt the blood drain from his face. "Harris is the one who alerted me about your possible return." "Good. Then the plan is working so far." Alexis checked her watch. "Once we're on the ground, we have 12 hours to get this information to the right people before the deal happens. After that..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. As the plane descended toward an unmarked airstrip in rural Virginia, Alexis looked out the window at the approaching American soil. Home, after 15 years in the shadows. "I should tell you," she said, her voice suddenly softer. More like the Alexis he remembered. "There's something else I came back for." "What's that?" She turned to him, and for a moment all the hardness fell away from her face. "To make things right with the people I hurt. My parents, Thomas, you." She swallowed. "I don't expect forgiveness. But they deserve the truth, even the parts that will be redacted from the official record." The plane touched down with a bump, jolting them both. "Well," Peter said, looking out at the 3 black SUVs waiting on the tarmac, "let's make sure you survive long enough to tell them." The black SUVs approached as Alexis and Peter descended the steps of the small jet. The Virginia countryside spread around them, peaceful and green, a stark contrast to the tension vibrating between them. "Remember," Alexis murmured, "trust no one except Harris. The lead vehicle stopped, and a tall man in an impeccable suit stepped out. He wore no visible identification, but Peter recognized him immediately as one of General Harris's most trusted aides. "Colonel Walsh," the man said with a nod. "Captain Reyes, I'm Agent Clark. The General sends his apologies for not meeting you personally." "Security protocols." Alexis gave the man a measuring look. "Mockingbird to nest," she said. Clark didn't hesitate.
The nest welcomes its songbird home. Alexis's shoulders relaxed slightly.
It was the correct response to their established code phrase. "Where are we going?" she asked as they were ushered into the middle SUV. "Secure facility in Fairfax County," Clark answered. "Off the books. General Harris is waiting there with a small team." The drive took nearly an hour, through winding country roads and eventually into suburban areas. Alexis stared out the window, drinking in the familiar landscape of her home country. So much looked the same, yet everything felt different. 15 years, she said quietly to Peter. "The last time I was in Virginia, smartphones were just becoming popular and people still use DVDs." Peter studied her profile. "You've missed a lot." The world moved on. "But some things never change," she replied, patting the pocket containing the flash drive. "Power, greed, the willingness to sacrifice others for personal gain." The SUV turned down an unmarked driveway leading to what appeared to be an ordinary office building. 3 stories, red brick with a small parking lot. Only the multiple security checkpoints and armed guards suggested it was anything but mundane. Inside, they were led through a series of hallways and security doors into a large conference room. General Harris rose from his seat at the head of the table as they entered. At 60, his hair was more silver than black, but his posture remained ramrod straight, his eyes sharp. "Captain Reyes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome home." Alexis saluted crisply, military training overriding the years spent in deep cover. "Thank you, sir. I wish it were under better circumstances." "We have a lot to discuss," Harris said, gesturing to the seats. Besides him, only 2 other people were in the room. A woman introduced as Dr. Lin Chen, a specialist in biohazards, and a man named Joseph Wilson from intelligence analysis. Once they were seated, Alexis placed the flash drive on the table. "Everything I've gathered over 15 years is on this drive. Names, dates, locations, bank transfers, video recordings of meetings. The entire network." Dr. Chen picked up the drive. "We should begin analyzing this immediately." "First," Alexis said, "I need your word that this stays contained to this room. No copies, no uploads to servers, no communications about it on any network." Wilson frowned. "That's highly irregular, Captain." "Protocol is what got my team killed 15 years ago." Alexis cut in, her voice hard. "Someone very high up in our government is involved in this. Someone with access to all your protocols, all your secure channels, all your foolproof systems." Harris held up a hand, silencing Wilson's protest. "Agreed. We analyze the data here on a closed system before deciding next steps." He nodded to Chen, who left with the drive to set up a secure computer. "Now," Harris said, leaning forward, "I need you to brief us, from the beginning." For the next 2 hours, Alexis outlined the events of the past 15 years. She described the ambush that killed her team, her capture and torture by enemy forces, and her eventual escape with the help of a CIA operative named David Rossi. Rossi had been tracking unusual weapons movements in the region, she explained. American-made experimental bioweapons that officially didn't exist, showing up in the hands of terrorist cells. He'd traced them back to a Black Ops program called Chimera, supposedly decommissioned in 2002, but actually still operating under deep cover. "I've never heard of such a program," Harris said, his brow furrowed. "That was the point, sir. Plausible deniability at every level." Alexis took a sip of water. "Rossi helped me fake my death a second time. We realized that whoever sent my team into that ambush must have known we were getting close to uncovering Chimera. They wanted to eliminate any potential witnesses." "And Rossi?" Peter asked. "Where is he now?" Alexis's face darkened. "Dead 4 years ago. Car accident on a mountain road in Turkey. Except there were no skid marks, no mechanical failure. He knew too much." Dr. Chen returned with a laptop. "I've isolated it from all networks as requested. The drive is encrypted?" "I'll unlock it," Alexis said, taking the computer. She typed in a long password and the screen filled with folders. "The main summary document is there," she pointed. "It outlines everything with links to the supporting evidence." They spent another hour reviewing the documents. The evidence was damning. High-ranking military officials, defense contractors, even a senator, all implicated in a scheme to sell experimental bioweapons to the highest bidders. This is, Wilson struggled for words. This is treason of the highest order. And it's about to get worse, Alexis said grimly. In less than 10 hours, they're making their biggest delivery yet. A strain of weaponized pneumonic plague that can spread through water systems, untraceable until it's too late, with a 94% mortality rate. Dr. Chen looked ill. That would make the COVID pandemic look like a common cold. The buyers are representatives from 3 different countries, all with known terrorist connections, Alexis continued. If this exchange happens, we're looking at the potential for millions of deaths, possibly even a global pandemic that could be weaponized at will. Harris stood up and paced the room. We need to stop this exchange. Where is it happening? Norfolk Naval Base, Alexis replied. Hidden in plain sight, disguised as a routine supply transfer to a research vessel. The documentation will all look legitimate. We'll need a strike team, Peter said. Small, elite, trustworthy. I have people I can call, Harris nodded. People outside the usual chain of command, who report directly to me. As they began planning the operation to intercept the exchange, Alexis's phone, a secure device provided by Harris's team, buzzed with an incoming call. She frowned at the unfamiliar number. Should I answer it? Harris nodded to Wilson, who ran a quick trace. It's coming from Pine Creek, your hometown. Alexis's heart skipped a beat. Put it on speaker, she answered, keeping her voice neutral. Hello? Is this... The voice on the other end hesitated. A male voice that made Alexis grip the edge of the table. I was told to call this number if I wanted to reach Colonel Walsh urgently. Thomas. It was Thomas. This is Colonel Walsh's associate, Alexis said, fighting to keep her voice steady. He's unavailable at the moment. Can I help you? This is Thomas Cooper. I'm a friend of Peter's. There was a pause. Someone broke into the Reyes house an hour ago. They're okay, but the place was ransacked. The intruders were looking for something specific. They ignored valuables. Went straight for Alexis's old room. Alexis and Peter exchanged alarmed looks. They took her medals, her journals, her laptop, anything with personal information. Thomas's voice grew tighter. And there's something else. Before they left, they spray-painted a message on the wall. It said, Mockingbird sings at her own funeral. The room went silent. Alexis closed her eyes briefly. Mr. Cooper, she said. Are the Reyes staying somewhere safe now? Yes, they're with me. I have a cabin outside town off the grid. No one knows about it. Good, keep them there. Don't use phones, don't contact anyone, don't go out for supplies. Who are these people? Thomas demanded. What do they want? This has something to do with Alexis, doesn't it? Even after 15 years, and Alexis swallowed hard. How strange to hear him say her name. To know he was thinking about her, worrying about her parents because of her even now. I'll have Colonel Walsh call you as soon as possible, she promised. For now, just stay hidden and stay safe. After she hung up, the room remained silent for a long moment. They're sending a message, Peter said finally. They know you're back and they know where to hit you where it hurts most. Alexis nodded, her face grim. They're trying to flush me out, or distract me from stopping the exchange. It changes our timeline, Harris said. If they know you're back, they might move up the exchange. Or cancel it altogether, Wilson suggested. No, Alexis shook her head. They've been planning this for years. Too much money at stake. They'll beef up security, maybe change some details, but the exchange will happen. She stood up suddenly. I need to go back to Pine Creek. Absolutely not, Harris said. That's exactly what they want. My parents and Thomas are in danger because of me, Alexis insisted. I can't just leave them exposed. They're safe for now, Peter reasoned. Thomas is smart. He'll keep them hidden. And what about when the cabin runs out of food? Or if one of them needs medicine? Alexis ran her hands through her short hair. This is why I stayed away for 15 years. To keep them safe. And now? Harris stepped forward. Captain Reyes, I understand your concern. But right now, you're the only one who can identify all the players in this exchange. We need you here. Alexis turned away, conflict evident in every line of her body. Finally, she nodded. I'll stay. But I want a protection detail sent to that cabin. People you trust completely, General. Already on it, Harris assured her. Now let's get back to planning this operation. He checked his watch. 8 hours until the exchange. As they returned to the table, Dr. Chen approached Alexis with a tablet. "Captain, there's something you should see in the medical files you recovered." Alexis took the tablet, scanning the information. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Peter asked. "The bioweapon," Alexis said. "It's not just any strain of plague." She looked up, meeting Chen's worried eyes. "It's genetically targeted, designed to affect specific ethnic groups more severely than others." "My God," Harris whispered. "That's genocide in a vial," Alexis finished. "And it's about to be sold to the highest bidder." Night fell as the team finalized their plan to intercept the weapons exchange. The secure facility hummed with controlled urgency, communications equipment being tested, weapons checked, tactical gear distributed to the small strike team General Harris had assembled. Alexis stood at a window, watching darkness settle over the Virginia countryside. She'd spent so many years in deserts and mountains that the lush greenery of her home country seemed almost unreal now, like something from a dream she'd had long ago. Peter approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You should rest," he said, handing her one. "We move out in 3 hours." "I've gone longer without sleep," she replied, accepting the cup gratefully. The warmth in her hands felt grounding. "Real. That doesn't mean you should." He leaned against the window frame. "Your body's not 25 anymore, no matter how tough you are." That earned him a small smile. "Thanks for the reminder." They drank their coffee in comfortable silence for a moment before Peter spoke again. "I talked to Thomas." Alexis nearly choked on her sip. "What, when?" "While you were going over the tactical maps with Harris. I called to check on him and your parents." Peter studied her face. He asked a lot of questions. Smart questions. He always was too smart for his own good. Alexis stared into her coffee. "What did you tell him?" "That it was a matter of national security. That they needed to stay hidden." Peter paused. "He knew I was lying, or at least not telling the whole truth." "Did he mention me?" Peter nodded. "He asked if this had something to do with your last mission. Said he'd always had doubts about your death. Little inconsistencies in the official story that never added up." "That sounds like Thomas, always piecing things together." Alexis closed her eyes briefly. "How did they seem?" "My parents?" "Scared, confused, but holding up. Your father asked me to find whoever did this and, quote, make them pay for disrespecting our daughter's memory." Alexis's throat tightened. "And to think I was worried they might have moved on. Forgotten me. No one who knew you could ever forget you, Lex." The moment stretched between them, filled with 15 years of unspoken words. Finally, Alexis turned away from the window. "I should check on the equipment," she said. "Lex." Peter caught her arm gently. "When this is over, what happens then?" She looked down at his hand on her arm, then back to his face. "Honestly, I don't know. I've been Mockingbird for so long I'm not sure Alexis Reyes exists anymore." "She does," Peter said firmly. "I'm looking at her." Before Alexis could respond, Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. "We have a problem." They followed her quickly to the main operations room where Harris and Wilson were bent over a computer screen. "What's happening?" Alexis asked. "We've been monitoring communications at Norfolk," Wilson explained. "There's been a change. The exchange has been moved up. By how much?" "It's happening in 90 minutes, Alexis checked her watch. "That doesn't give us enough time to get the full team in position." "Exactly," Harris said grimly. "They know someone's onto them. This is their countermove." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They needed to stop this exchange, but with limited time and resources, the odds of success had just plummeted. "We abort," Wilson suggested. "Regroup, plan a different approach?" "No." Alexis shook her head firmly. "If we miss this window, they'll go even deeper underground. We might not get another chance before the weapons are deployed." "What do you suggest, Captain?" Harris asked. Alexis studied the tactical map of Norfolk Naval Base. "A smaller team. Just me and Peter, plus 2 of your best. We go in light, fast, and quiet." "That's a suicide mission," Wilson protested. "No," Peter said, surprising everyone by backing Alexis. "It could work. A smaller team might slip through their security net more easily than a full tactical unit." Harris considered this. "The priority is securing the bioweapon. Even if we can't arrest everyone involved, we need to get that vial." "Agreed," Alexis nodded. "In and out. Grab the weapon, gather what evidence we can, and extract." Harris made his decision. "You have green light, Captain. Choose your 2 additional team members." 30 minutes later, Alexis, Peter, and 2 specialists, a former Navy SEAL named Rivera and a CIA infiltration expert named Chen, were airborne in a helicopter, racing toward Norfolk. "Everyone clear on the plan?" Alexis asked over the comm system. 3 affirmative responses came back. The plan was simple by necessity. Infiltrate the base using Harris's clearance, locate the research vessel where the exchange was happening, identify the weapon, secure it, and get out. If possible, gather evidence on the conspirators present. But the bioweapon was the priority. 5 minutes to drop, the pilot announced. Alexis checked her gear one last time, then caught Peter watching her. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just thinking about how many times we've done this. You and me heading into trouble. Usually with more backup," she reminded him. True. But the company was never better. Despite everything, Alexis felt herself smile. She'd missed this, the calm before action, the focused clarity, the absolute trust in the person next to you. The helicopter touched down briefly at a secondary landing pad on the edge of the vast naval complex. The team disembarked quickly and the aircraft lifted off again, disappearing into the night. "Comcheck," Alexis whispered as they moved toward the first security checkpoint. "Clear," came the responses. Using the credentials Harris had provided, they passed through 3 security checkpoints without raising alarms. The base was quieter than usual at this late hour, with most personnel off duty. That worked in their favor, but also meant any unexpected presence would stand out more. According to the intel, the research vessel is docked at Pier 7, Peter said quietly as they moved through the shadows between warehouses. Eyes on Pier 7, Rivera confirmed from his position ahead of them. "I count 4 guards, more than standard for a research vessel. Any sign of the buyers?" Alexis asked. "Negative. But there's activity on the deck. Looks like they're preparing to cast off," Alexis frowned. This wasn't part of the expected timeline. They're moving the exchange offshore. Makes it harder to intercept. She made a quick decision. "Change of plan. We need to get on that vessel before it leaves." "How do we do that without being seen?" Chen asked. "We create a distraction," Alexis said, her mind racing. "Rivera, can you access the base's emergency systems from your position?" "Affirmative." "What do you need?" "A localized fire alarm in one of the warehouses near the pier. Nothing dangerous, just noisy." "On it." 2 minutes later, alarms blared from a warehouse 2 buildings away from their position. As predicted, 3 of the 4 guards moved toward the disturbance, leaving a single man watching the gangway. "Now's our chance," Alexis said. "Chen, take him out, non-lethal." Chen moved silently across the open space, a shadow among shadows. The guard never saw him coming. A quick chokehold, and the man was unconscious, hidden behind a stack of crates. The team moved quickly up the gangway and onto the research vessel, a mid-sized ship outfitted with laboratory facilities. They split up, Rivera to the engine room to prevent the ship from leaving port, Chen to secure their exit route, and Alexis and Peter to find the bioweapon. "If I were hiding an illegal weapons exchange," Alexis whispered as they moved through the corridor, "I'd use the main lab, somewhere with containment protocols already in place." They found the lab on the 2nd deck, a state-of-the-art facility with airlocks and negative pressure systems. Through the glass windows, they could see 3 men in suits and 2 in military uniforms, standing around a small metal briefcase on a central table. "That's it," Alexis breathed. "The weapon is in that case." Peter studied the men through his tactical binoculars. "I recognize one of them. General Raymond Davis. He was on the Joint Chiefs until last year." "He's on my list," Alexis confirmed. "High up in the Chimera chain of command." "The others?" "The older man in the gray suit is Senator Whitaker. The younger one beside him is his chief of staff. The other 2 military officers I don't recognize by sight, but based on their insignia. They're high-ranking." They watched as Davis opened the case, revealing a rack of small vials containing a cloudy liquid. He removed one, holding it up to the light. "We need to move now," Alexis said, "before they distribute those vials." "Wait," Peter put a hand on her arm. "Someone else is coming." The door to the lab opened and a tall man in an expensive suit entered. The others straightened noticeably at his arrival. Alexis gasped softly. "That's Richard Harmon, Deputy Secretary of Defense, your deep throat, the one at the top of the conspiracy?" "Yes, and there's our proof." She raised her tactical camera. capturing images of Harmon examining the vials, nodding in approval, then accepting an envelope from one of the foreign men. Rivera, Chen. Status report, Alexis whispered into her comm. Engine room secure, Rivera replied. They won't be going anywhere. Exit route clear, Chen added. But we've got company coming. A patrol boat is approaching the pier. Alexis made her decision. We move now. Rivera hit the ship's general alarm. Chen, be ready to cover our extraction. Peter, you're with me. At Rivera's signal, alarms blared throughout the vessel. Alexis and Peter used the momentary confusion to burst into the lab, weapons drawn. Federal agents, hands up, nobody move, Peter shouted. The men in the room froze, shock evident on their faces. Harmon recovered first, reaching inside his jacket. Alexis didn't hesitate. She fired, the bullet hitting his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. The next one goes between your eyes, she warned, keeping her weapon trained on him as Peter secured the case of vials. You have no idea what you're doing, Harmon growled, clutching his wounded shoulder. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, Alexis replied coldly. Richard Harmon, mastermind of Chimera, seller of American weapons to terrorists, traitor to your country. Recognition dawned in his eyes. Reyes, Captain Alexis Reyes? You're supposed to be dead. Sorry to disappoint, she kept her gun steady. 15 years I've been tracking you and your operation. 15 years of watching you profit from death and suffering. You're making a mistake, Senator Whitaker cut in. This is a legitimate research project. Those vials contain vaccines for biological defense research. Save it for your trial, Senator, Peter said, securing the case. We have all the evidence we need. Case secured, Alexis reported into her comm. Moving to extraction. Negative, Chen's voice came back, tight with tension. Extraction route is hot. Multiple armed hostiles on the gangway. They must have been tipped off, Rivera added. I count at least 12, maybe more. Alexis exchanged a look with Peter. They were trapped on the vessel, outnumbered with some of the most dangerous bioweapons ever created, and 5 very powerful, very angry conspirators. New plan, she said into her comm. Rivera, can you access the ship's launch? The small boat on the starboard side? Affirmative. Get it ready. We're coming to you. Chen, create a diversion on the port side. Draw their attention away from the starboard launch. Copy that. Alexis turned to the men in the room. On the ground, all of you. Face down, hands behind your heads. You'll never make it off this ship alive, Harmon warned, even as he complied. And even if you do, where will you go? I have people everywhere. Maybe, Alexis acknowledged, zip-tying his hands. But right now you've got a bigger problem. What's that? He sneered. She smiled coldly. Me. Gunfire erupted from the port side of the ship as Chen carried out his diversion. Alexis and Peter used the distraction to move quickly through the corridors. Peter carrying the metal case containing the bioweapon vials. Alexis leading the way with her weapon ready. How far to the launch? Peter asked as they ducked into a service corridor. 2 levels down, starboard side. Alexis replied, checking the ship's schematic they'd memorized. Rivera should have it ready by now. They reached a stairwell and started down, only to halt at the sound of boots on metal below. Alexis held up a hand, signaling Peter to stop. At least 4, she whispered, hearing multiple footsteps approaching. No way around. She shook her head. This is the only route to the launch. Peter set down the case carefully. Like old times, then? Despite the danger, a smile tugged at Alexis's mouth. Just like old times. When the first guard rounded the corner of the stairwell, Alexis was waiting. A swift strike to the throat, followed by a leg sweep that sent him tumbling into his companions. Peter moved in seamlessly, taking down the second man with a precise blow. Years of working together made them an effective team, anticipating each other's moves without needing to communicate. In less than 30 seconds, all 4 guards were unconscious and still got it, Peter said, breathing hard as he retrieved the case. Never lost it, Alexis replied, checking the guards for useful items. She found a radio which she pocketed. This will let us monitor their communications. They continued down to the lower deck, moving more cautiously now. The sound of gunfire had stopped, which could mean either that Chen had been captured or that he'd moved to another position. Chen. Status report, Alexis whispered into her comm. Static answered her. Rivera, do you copy? She tried instead. More static, then a burst of words. At the launch. Surrounded. Need backup. Alexis exchanged a look with Peter. They've got Rivera pinned down at the launch. We need another way out. Ideas? She thought quickly. The bioweapon is what matters. We need to get it off this ship and into secure hands. Harris is waiting for our extraction signal, Peter reminded her. If we can get to any communication equipment with enough range. Alexis nodded. Bridge. They'll have radio equipment that can reach the mainland. They changed direction, heading toward the front of the ship and up one level. Every intersection required careful checking. The vessel was crawling with security now, all looking for them. This isn't going to work, Peter said after they narrowly avoided another patrol. We'll never make it to the bridge. Too many of them between us and it. Alexis pressed her lips together, thinking. Then her eyes lit up. We don't need to go to them. We make them come to us. How? Fire alarm won't work. They'll know it's us. She looked around, noting their position near the ship's galley. But a real fire might. Understanding dawned on Peter's face. Create enough chaos we might slip through. Exactly. Plus, they won't want to risk damaging the ship. That'll change how they deploy their people. She moved toward the galley. Cover me. Inside the industrial kitchen, Alexis worked quickly, turning all the gas burners to high without lighting them. As the gas began to fill the air, she took a roll of paper towels, soaked them in cooking oil, and stuffed them into a microwave. This should do it, she said, setting the microwave timer for 5 minutes. Let's move. They headed away from the galley, finding a storage closet near a junction that gave them a clear view of multiple corridors. When the fire starts, they'll follow emergency protocols, Alexis explained. Security will be focused on containing the fire and evacuating personnel. And we use the confusion to get to the bridge, Peter finished. They waited, tense minutes ticking by. Then an explosion rocked the ship, larger than Alexis had anticipated. Alarms immediately began blaring throughout the vessel. That's our cue, she said, opening the closet door. As predicted, the ship erupted into organized chaos. Fire suppression teams rushed toward the galley, while other personnel moved toward evacuation points. Alexis and Peter moved against the flow, wearing the determined expressions of people responding to an emergency. They reached the bridge with minimal resistance, just one guard who Alexis quickly subdued. Inside, the ship's captain and navigation officer were too focused on the fire situation to immediately register the intruders. Nobody move, Peter ordered, raising his weapon. The captain froze, then slowly raised his hands. Who are you people? Federal agents, Alexis said, moving to the communication station. And you're harboring terrorists and bioweapons. The captain's face registered genuine shock. What? I was told this was a classified research transport. You were lied to, Peter told him, keeping his weapon trained on both men. Now sit down and stay quiet. Alexis activated the radio, tuning to the secure frequency Harris had provided. Mockingbird to Nest, do you copy? After a moment of static, Harris's voice came through. Copy, Mockingbird. Status? Package secured but extraction compromised. We need immediate backup at Norfolk Pier 7. Research vessel Horizon. Fire on board, multiple hostiles. Copy that. Backup en route. ETA 12 minutes, Alexis looked at Peter. 12 minutes is a long time. Too long, he agreed. We need to move the package now. Captain, Alexis turned to the man. Is there a helicopter pad on this vessel? He nodded warily. Aft deck. But with the fire, is it currently compromised? She pressed. No, it's on the opposite end from the galley. Alexis turned back to the radio. Nest, can you redirect air support to the Horizon's helicopter pad? Affirmative, Harris responded. Diverting now. ETA 7 minutes. That's more like it, she said. We're heading to the extraction point. As they secured the bridge crew and prepared to move out, the ship's radio crackled to life. Captain Reynolds, this is Harmon. What's your status? Alexis picked up the handset, pressing it to the captain's ear and whispering, Tell him everything's under control. The fire is being contained. The captain hesitated, then complied. This is Reynolds. Fire in the galley, but we're containing it. No damage to critical systems. And our guests? Harmon's voice was tight with anger. The captain looked at Alexis, who mouthed, Still looking for them. Security teams are still searching. No sign yet. There was a pause, then Harmon spoke again. I'm coming to the bridge. We need to accelerate our departure. Alexis took the handset away. Change of plans. We use Harmon to get to the helipad. 3 minutes later, when Richard Harmon entered the bridge, he found himself looking down the barrel of Alexis's weapon. "Welcome back," she said coolly. "You're just in time to escort us to the helicopter pad." "You won't make it off this ship," Harmon said, his wounded shoulder now bandaged. "I have 30 armed men on board." "Then you better tell them to clear a path," Peter said, holding up the case containing the bioweapons. "Unless you want an accident with these." Fear flickered in Harmon's eyes. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk releasing those agents, wouldn't I?" Alexis stepped closer. 15 years I've hunted you, watched you sell weapons that killed thousands. What makes you think I wouldn't sacrifice myself to stop you?" For a tense moment, they stared at each other. Then Harmon reached slowly for his radio. "All units, clear the path to the helipad. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." With Harmon walking in front of them, they moved through the ship toward the aft deck. True to his word, security personnel stood down as they passed, though hatred burned in their eyes. On the helipad, a military helicopter was just touching down as they emerged. General Harris himself jumped out, accompanied by 6 heavily armed soldiers. "Cutting it close, aren't you?" Harris shouted over the rotor noise as he approached. "Had to make a stop to pick up a souvenir," Alexis replied, pushing Harmon forward. "Deputy Secretary of Defense Richard Harmon, mastermind of the Chimera program." Harris's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly. "Secure the prisoner and the package," he ordered his men. As soldiers took custody of Harmon and the case, Alexis finally allowed herself to breathe. 15 years of work culminating in this moment. "We've got the others in custody, too," Harris told them as they boarded the helicopter. "Senator Whitaker is singing like a canary, trying to cut a deal. And Chen?" "Rivera?" Peter asked. "Rivera's wounded but alive. No sign of Chen yet, but we have teams searching." As the helicopter lifted off, Alexis looked back at the research vessel, parts of it now visibly burning. 15 years of her life dedicated to this mission. Now it was over. The thought was both freeing and terrifying. "What now?" Peter asked quietly, reading her expression. "Now comes the hard part," she replied. "Going home." 2 days later, after debriefings and medical checks and enough paperwork to fill a library, Alexis stood on a hilltop overlooking Pine Creek. Her hometown looked smaller than she remembered, more fragile somehow. Peter stood beside her, waiting patiently as he had for 15 years. "They're at the house," he said. "Thomas called this morning. Your parents decided they wanted to be home regardless of the risk." "And you told them I'm coming?" He shook his head. "Not exactly. I said I had important news about their daughter. I thought you should tell them yourself." Alexis nodded, her throat tight. "What if they can't forgive me?" "They're your parents, Lex. They've spent 15 years mourning you." "Trust me, anger will be way down the list after the shock and joy wear off." "And Thomas?" she asked, finally voicing the question that had been haunting her. Peter hesitated. "That's more complicated. He's built a life believing you were gone. It might take time. Time I can give him," she said softly. "I've got nothing but time now." They drove to the Reyes home in silence. The small ranch house looked just as Alexis remembered it. Right down to the wind chimes her mother had hung on the porch when Alexis was a teenager. She sat in the car for a long moment after Peter parked, gathering her courage. "Want me to go first?" he offered. She shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do myself." Her legs felt strangely weak as she walked up the familiar path to the front door. She raised her hand to knock, then lowered it again, paralyzed by fear and hope and 15 years of separation. Before she could decide what to do, the door opened. Thomas stood there, frozen in the doorway, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I saw the car pull up," he said, his voice barely audible. "I thought I was seeing things." "Hello, Thomas," she managed, her own voice strangled. For a heartbeat, they simply stared at each other. Then Thomas stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You're alive," he whispered against her hair. "You're really alive." She nodded against his shoulder, unable to speak. "Robert?" "Elaine?" Thomas called into the house, not letting go of Alexis. "You need to come here now." Footsteps approached, and then a gasp that Alexis felt in her soul. "Alexis?" Her mother's voice broke on the word. Thomas released her, stepping aside so she could see her parents standing in the hallway. Her father supported her mother, both of them pale with shock. "It's me," Alexis said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm home." Her mother moved first, breaking away from her father to rush forward with a cry. Then her father followed, and Alexis found herself enveloped in the embrace she had dreamed of for 15 long years. How? Her father asked, pulling back just enough to look at her face. They told us you were dead. They gave us your medals, your flag. It's a long story, Alexis said. One I can finally tell you. As they moved inside, Peter watching from a respectful distance, Alexis felt something she hadn't felt in 15 years, the weight lifting from her shoulders. There would be questions, explanations, probably anger, and certainly tears. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was home. After 15 years in the shadows, Captain Alexis Reyes had stepped back into the light.